The woke crowd or postmodernists, I'm going to grab my paper here if I could, I'll read from it. I had to write this out for myself because I couldn't even remember my own definitions. I'm suffering from old age, right? The first trend of it is relative. The relative values of postmoderns don't relate to anything except the moment of what the elite tell us is good or bad, right or wrong, etc. Now, because of that, because there's no absolute that, say, you and I, if we were Christians, we could point to the scripture. We could say, the scripture says this. We could debate that. We have a reference point. They don't. Their reference point floats constantly. The second characteristic is, because of that, it's consensus driven. You mentioned it. You talked about they have this language, and they talk to each other in this, and we call it virtue signaling. And they're virtue signaling to each other. They're the great. They're good. Their ideas are best. They work. Everybody else is bad. And so the whole crowd has to buy into this consensus. This was precisely what President Václav Havel of the Czech Republic wrote in his essay on this very subject, when he said, everybody now, the new totalitarianism in the 21st century is the lie. And everybody has to give lip service to the lie. What's the lie? The lie is that they're right, that it's true. But remember, logic and reason are of no factor in this, only agreement with the consensus. Number three, it's constantly changing. Why? Because it's relative and it's consensus based. And so what may be wrong yesterday will be right today, and vice versa. And so they're constantly changing, constantly flipping everything that the radical left has been preaching since the 1960s. They flipped it over on its head. It's now the reverse of what they said. The next thing is, all of these truths they have are self-contradicting because they're relative, they're changing, they're consensus-driven. They even contradict themselves. And you see this. And that's why any person who is a part of the virtue signaling crowd, when he or she steps off the reservation, so to speak, they will be viciously attacked by their own people. You know, in South America, they have a fish called a piranha, and the piranha is just a vicious little fish that it can strip a cow of all of its flesh in just minutes, a whole school of piranha. And it will turn on its own members. As if a piranha gets caught on a hook, the members of the other piranhas will turn on it and eat it. It's just what they do. And so that's why, since it's self-contradicting and everything resolves in this consensus structure, as soon as somebody leaves, they can't tolerate that. That's a threat to the whole structure. And so they must attack that person viciously, even more so than their opposition. And if you notice, when they do the attack, they don't deal in logic, they don't deal in reason, they only deal in cliches and trigger words and those words that you were talking about. That's all they can do. And so the last characteristic is that it's compartmentalized. And what that means is, because there's so many contradictions in everything they're thinking, they create compartments in their own minds. So over here is your religious compartment. Over here is your sex life compartment. Over here is your public life and your family life, and they're all in different compartments. And the only unpardonable sin, Joshua, is to create a hole between the compartments where they can interact. That's the unpardonable sin. They will not allow you to do that. It drives them a little nutty when you do.